The 1960s was an electrifying decade that birthed legends, guitar gods, psychedelic trailblazers, and poetic rebels who redefined music and culture forever. From the smoky stages of San Francisco to the screaming arenas of London, these rock stars lived fast, played louder, and carved their names into music history. But behind the glitter of gold records and platinum fame, some of these icons harbored a much darker reality. Their music sold millions. Their faces were plastered on bedroom walls. Yet, when the lights dimmed and the crowds vanished, not all of them basked in luxury. Some ended up alone, abandoned, and broke. In this video, we're peeling back the curtain on the heartbreaking and rarely talked about endings of 60s rock legends who, despite once ruling the world, died with nothing. No mansions, no royalties, no headlines, just the echo of a forgotten tune. These aren't just cautionary tales, they're a sobering reminder of how fame fades and how the music industry can sometimes chew you up and spit you out. Arthur Lee. Arthur Lee was the enigmatic and brilliant force behind Love, a band that reshaped psychedelic rock with their seminal 1967 album Forever Changes. This album is widely celebrated as a masterpiece, blending intricate melodies, poetic lyrics, and rich orchestration that set it apart from its contemporaries. Lee's songwriting was deeply personal and visionary, capturing a complex mix of emotions and social commentary during a turbulent era. His artistry carved a unique niche that influenced countless musicians and cemented Love's place in rock history. However, Lee's genius was intertwined with turmoil. Despite early acclaim, he battled paranoia and struggled with drug use, which fueled a rebellious, anti-establishment attitude that often alienated him from the music industry and even his own bandmates. This volatility affected his career trajectory, making sustained success difficult. By the 1980s, Love's influence had waned, and Lee found himself largely forgotten by the mainstream, wrestling with personal demons and the harsh realities of a fickle industry. His life took a grim turn in the 1990s when legal troubles culminated in a firearms conviction, leading to a 5-year prison sentence. Upon release, there was a glimmer of revival as a dedicated cult following re-emerged, eager to celebrate the legacy of Forever Changes and Lee's broader work. Yet this resurgence was fragile. Diagnosed with leukemia, Lee faced grave health challenges without sufficient financial resources to cover his treatment. The devotion of fans became crucial as they rallied to help fund his care, a testament to the lasting impact of his music. Arthur Lee passed away in 2006, remembered not only for his unmatched talent and innovative contributions to rock music, but also for a life marked by hardship and unfulfilled recognition. His story remains a poignant reminder of the fine line between creative brilliance and personal struggle. Peter Green. Peter Green was the original heart and soul of Fleetwood Mac, laying the foundation for what would become one of rock's most enduring bands. His mastery of the blues guitar earned him legendary status, with iconic tracks like Black Magic Woman and Albatross, showcasing his soulful playing and emotional depth. His style was raw yet delicate, earning comparisons to greats like Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton, and firmly establishing Fleetwood Mac's early identity as a blues powerhouse. However, Green's journey took a tragic detour. Despite his success, he became disillusioned with the music industry and material wealth, famously giving away large sums of his earnings. His battles with mental illness, specifically schizophrenia, began to overshadow his career. It's widely believed that LSD use in the late 1960s played a significant role in triggering his mental health decline. By the mid-1970s, Green was struggling profoundly, experiencing psychotic episodes that landed him in psychiatric hospitals multiple times. During this period, his life spiraled into hardship. He lived in poverty, often in poor and unstable conditions, a stark contrast to the fame and fortune he once enjoyed. This reality shocked many fans who had only known him through his brilliant music and enigmatic persona. Despite these struggles, Green made intermittent returns to music over the years, offering glimpses of his former brilliance, though never quite recapturing the success of his early career. Peter Green passed away in 2020, leaving behind a legacy of hauntingly beautiful music and a cautionary tale about the costs of fame and mental illness. His story is one of immense talent lost to the shadows of personal torment, yet his influence continues to resonate deeply within the blues and rock worlds. Skip Spence, Alexander Skip Spence, was one of the most uniquely gifted yet tragically fated musicians of the 1960s counterculture. A founding member of both Jefferson Airplane and Moby Grape, Spence was a multi-instrumentalist whose creativity seemed boundless. As Moby Grape's drummer turned guitarist and songwriter, his contributions helped shape the band's genre-defying blend of rock, folk, blues, and psychedelia. Critics and peers alike viewed him as a visionary, someone who could channel the spirit of the era into deeply expressive music. However, Spence's brilliance unraveled almost as quickly as it emerged. In 1968, during a period of heavy LSD use, he suffered a severe psychotic break and infamously attempted to attack a bandmate with a fire axe while under the influence. This led to his commitment to Bellevue Hospital in New York, where he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. After his release, he recorded the hauntingly intimate solo album Or entirely by himself, on a borrowed 4-track recorder. Though it was largely ignored upon release, Or later gained cult status, praised for its raw vulnerability and stark portrait of a mind in turmoil. Spence never regained his footing. His mental health continued to deteriorate, and he spent the next 3 decades cycling through institutions, shelters, and temporary housing. His rare public appearances were erratic, and his once promising career faded into obscurity. Despite his monumental influence on psychedelic rock, he received little recognition or financial reward for his contributions. When Spence died of lung cancer in 1999, he was living in poverty, dependent on the goodwill of friends and admirers who stepped in to cover his medical expenses and funeral. His passing was barely noticed by the industry that once embraced him. For many, Spence became a heartbreaking symbol of the era's dark underbelly, an artist consumed by the very forces that once fueled his creativity. Danny Kerwin's story is one of brilliance overshadowed by personal demons and industry neglect. Joining Fleetwood Mac in 1968, at just 18 years old, he quickly established himself as a vital force within the band. His guitar work brought a lyrical, melodic touch that expanded the group's blues roots into more experimental territory. Kerwin was instrumental in shaping the sound of albums like Then Play On, contributing both as a guitarist and songwriter. His compositions displayed emotional depth and musical sophistication far beyond his years. Yet, behind the scenes, Kerwin was struggling. Intense pressure, combined with a sensitive temperament, led to increasing issues with alcohol and erratic behavior. By 1972, his problems had become unmanageable, and Fleetwood Mac dismissed him after an alcohol-fueled breakdown before a show. The decision marked the beginning of a long, downward spiral. In the years that followed, Kerwin attempted to launch a solo career. He released several albums throughout the late 70s, but none achieved commercial success. Critics recognized his talent, but the music failed to find an audience. Isolated and without a support system, Kerwin began to slip through the cracks. By the 1980s, reports surfaced that he was homeless, living rough on the streets of London. Efforts by former bandmates and journalists to reconnect with him revealed a man deeply affected by mental illness, likely undiagnosed or untreated for years. Despite his central role in Fleetwood Mac's formative years, Kerwin saw little in the way of royalties or recognition. The band's later global fame did not include him, and he was largely forgotten by the mainstream. When he died in 2018 at the age of 68, it was confirmed that he had spent much of his later life in shelters and care homes. His death was quiet, like much of his post-Fleetwood Mac life, marked by a sense of what could have been. Dave Alexander. Dave Alexander's role in shaping the raw, aggressive sound of the Stooges often goes unrecognized, but his bass lines were a crucial element of the band's foundation. As the original bassist, he helped drive the primal energy of albums like The Stooges and, most notably, Funhouse. His playing was both minimalist and powerful, anchoring the chaos surrounding Iggy Pop's wild performances and Ron Asheton's distorted guitar work. Without Alexander's steady presence, the band's early recordings would not have had the same visceral impact that would go on to inspire generations of punk and alternative musicians. Yet, Alexander remained in the shadows. Soft-spoken and introverted, he was the opposite of frontman Iggy Pop's theatrical persona. But internally, he was battling demons of his own. Alcohol began to consume him, affecting both his health and his reliability. During a 1970 performance in Detroit, he appeared on stage too intoxicated to play. That incident led to his dismissal from the band, a move that effectively ended his professional music career. Unlike other rock casualties who staged comebacks or found new avenues in music, Alexander disappeared from the spotlight. He never returned to recording or touring, instead falling deeper into addiction and health complications. Suffering from acute pancreatitis, a condition exacerbated by years of alcohol abuse, he died in 1975 at the age of just 27, joining the infamous 27 Club of musicians who passed away far too young. At the time of his death, the Stooges had not yet achieved the legendary status they hold today. The band had disbanded, and their groundbreaking influence was still years from being fully acknowledged. Alexander saw none of the acclaim or commercial resurgence that eventually came their way. His name is now mentioned with reverence among music historians and punk aficionados, but during his life, he was underappreciated and left behind, an essential but forgotten architect of a movement he never got to witness flourish. Sid Barrett. Sid Barrett's legacy looms large over the origins of Pink Floyd, despite his brief time with the band. As the group's founding member, principal songwriter, and lead guitarist, Barrett crafted a surreal and otherworldly sound that defined their debut album, The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. His playful lyrics, psychedelic imagery, and musical experimentation set Pink Floyd apart from their peers in the burgeoning underground scene of 1960s London. But Barrett's brilliance came at a steep cost. His heavy and frequent use of LSD exacerbated what many believe was an underlying mental illness, possibly schizophrenia. By 1968, his behavior had become so erratic and unpredictable that the band made the painful decision to replace him with David Gilmour. Sid drifted away from music almost entirely after that, releasing just 2 solo albums before vanishing into seclusion. He returned to his hometown of Cambridge, adopting a life of reclusion under his birth name, Roger Barrett. He shunned interviews, refused contact with former bandmates, and pursued painting and gardening in quiet anonymity. Though Pink Floyd's immense global success ensured that he continued to receive royalty checks, Barrett chose a minimalist lifestyle. His home was modest, his possessions few, and his routine reclusive. Neighbors described him as friendly but deeply private, often mistaken as just another quiet local man. His finances were managed by his family, and despite the royalties, he never displayed interest in wealth or fame. At the time of his death in 2006, from complications related to diabetes, It was revealed that he had left behind a relatively modest estate, especially considering his influence in rock history. Barrett had been a comet, brilliant and short-lived, whose creativity birthed a musical revolution, but whose final decades were marked by silence, solitude, and a retreat from the world he helped shape. Jim Gordon. Jim Gordon was one of the most sought-after session drummers of the 1960s and 1970s. A member of the elite Wrecking Crew, he lent his talent to some of the most iconic recordings in rock history. His rhythmic brilliance is heard on hits by George Harrison, Carly Simon, Joe Cocker, and the Beach Boys. But it was his collaboration with Eric Clapton on Layla, where Gordon contributed both the unforgettable piano coda and the drums that cemented his place in music history. Behind the scenes, however, Gordon's life was unraveling. He began exhibiting signs of severe mental illness, later diagnosed as schizophrenia. Despite pleas for help and clear evidence of psychological deterioration, he was misdiagnosed for years. His condition worsened to the point that, during a psychotic episode in 1983, Gordon tragically killed his mother, believing voices in his head told him to do so. He was sentenced to 16 years to life in prison, where he remained until his death in 2023. Though he continued to struggle with mental illness during incarceration, he received little attention or recognition from the music world. His contributions were often overshadowed by the crime that ended his career. Throughout his time in prison, Gordon saw little of the fortune his work had helped generate. Many who listened to the timeless tracks he shaped had no idea he was even behind them. He died largely forgotten, a brilliant musician whose legacy was marred by tragedy and silence. His life is a haunting reminder of how the music industry and society at large often fail those who suffer from mental illness. Gordon's story isn't just one of artistic brilliance, but of a profound and painful descent that left one of rock's greatest drummers confined in every sense of the word. James Carr. James Carr's voice was once hailed as one of the finest in soul music. With a raw, emotive delivery that could shatter hearts, he stood among giants like Otis Redding and Percy Sledge. The Dark End of the Street, released in 1967, remains his crowning achievement, a haunting ballad about forbidden love that has transcended genres, covered by artists from Aretha Franklin to Elvis Costello. Yet, for all the reverence musicians held for him, Carr himself never reaped the rewards of his artistry. His struggle with bipolar disorder made it nearly impossible for him to maintain the rigorous demands of touring or recording. At times, he would freeze mid-performance, unable to continue. Labels quickly lost patience. Without consistent promotion, his career slipped through the cracks despite his undeniable talent. By the 1970s, Carr was largely out of the public eye, and while he made a brief comeback in the early 90s, it never reignited mainstream interest. He spent his final decades in Memphis, a city known for its musical legacy, but which offered Carr little in return. He was often seen wandering local neighborhoods or quietly attending church, occasionally singing but never performing in the spotlight. The royalties from his signature song had dried up, either due to poor contract terms or mismanagement. James Carr died in 2001, not in a blaze of tributes or televised memorials, but in near anonymity. His voice, once a staple of soul radio and jukeboxes, faded into the background of history. His life underscores the harsh reality faced by many musicians, where talent isn't always enough to secure stability, recognition, or dignity. Carr's legacy lives on through his music, even if the man himself was left behind by the industry he helped shape. Ron Pigpen McKernan. Ron Pigpen McKernan was the beating blues heart of the Grateful Dead before the band became a cultural juggernaut. With a gritty voice, a love for old-school R&B, and a magnetic presence on harmonica and keys, Pigpen grounded the Dead's early psychedelic experiments with earthy, emotional soul. Unlike his bandmates, he wasn't into LSD or the cosmic tripping that defined the San Francisco scene. His vices were more traditional and, ultimately, more destructive. Heavy drinking plagued Pigpen throughout his time with the band. While others in the Dead explored new sonic and spiritual dimensions, he quietly withered under the weight of alcoholism. As the tours grew longer and the music grew more complex, his health began to fail. By 1971, he was missing shows and studio sessions, and by 1972, he was largely sidelined. Still, when he did perform, fans were reminded why his raw vocals had first helped define the band's identity. Pigpen died on March 8, 1973, from gastrointestinal hemorrhaging caused by his drinking. He was only 27, joining the infamous 27 Club. Unlike many of his bandmates, he never lived to see the Grateful Dead become a touring powerhouse with millions in ticket sales and merchandise. He didn't benefit from the decades of legacy building that followed. There was no big estate or publicized will, just the residue of a short, passionate life lived fast and hard. Today, he's remembered by die-hard Deadheads and blues aficionados, but to the wider world, he's often overshadowed. While the Grateful Dead's legend expanded into an empire, Pigpen's legacy remained small and intimate, less a myth and more a memory etched in smoky bars and scratched vinyl. The legends of the 1960s brought us timeless music, but for many of them, the price of fame was more than they could bear. Their lives remind us that the spotlight can fade fast, and that behind every platinum record might be a soul struggling in silence. Which of these stories shocked you the most? Did you know about their tragic ends? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you found this video insightful, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that peel back the curtain on music history's forgotten faces. Thanks for watching.